All he did was ask his neighbor's son to stop cutting through his yard. Within minutes, she was screaming, recording and dialing 911, claiming he was a threat. Blue and red lights splashed across the perfect lawns of Brookhaven Estates, bouncing off white fences and polished SUVs. It was supposed to be a calm Saturday, but the neighborhood had stopped breathing. 2 police cruisers idled in front of DeAndre Collins' house, their engines humming low, while officers spoke with a woman waving her phone, still recording. Her name was Melinda Keene. She was the kind of neighbor who never missed an HOA meeting, the kind who sent reminder emails about trash pickup times and grass length. Now she stood there furious, shaking, saying words that didn't fit the quiet, steady man across from her. DeAndre wasn't shouting. He wasn't moving. He just stood still, arms at his sides, face calm but eyes heavy, like someone who had lived through this kind of misunderstanding before. "Sir," one officer said carefully, "she's claiming you threatened her." DeAndre let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Threatened her? Officer, I told her I have video footage of her son destroying my property. That's all I said." Melinda's voice cracked. "He's a child. You scared him." The younger officer looked between them uneasy. The air was thick, charged. Neighbors peeked from porches, phones raised, pretending to be concerned but clearly entertained. Judgment floated through the air like smoke. "Do you have that footage, sir?" the officer asked. DeAndre nodded. His hands were steady, not because he wasn't angry, but because he refused to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing him lose control. He tapped play. On the screen, the video showed a teenage boy, Brandon Keene, hopping a small fence, his sneakers kicking up dirt. A garden light toppled. He laughed, then stomped on another one until it shattered. He cut across the yard like it was his own, vanishing into his backyard. The officer watched silently. Then he looked at Melinda. She blinked, frozen. He didn't mean to," she stammered. "It was an accident." DeAndre's voice stayed level. "He's done it 3 times this week." Nobody spoke. The only sound was a sprinkler clicking somewhere nearby and the faint hum of the police cruisers. Finally, one officer exhaled and said, "All right, no arrests tonight. We'll file a report. Looks like a misunderstanding." Melinda's jaw tightened. "A misunderstanding? He approached my son. He asked him to stop cutting through his yard," the officer replied, tired now. "And he has proof." Something cracked in her expression. She turned away, muttering something under her breath. DeAndre stood still, trying to breathe through the heavy weight in his chest. Not anger at the officers, not even at her, but at how fast a simple boundary could turn into flashing lights and neighbors filming like it was entertainment. One of the officers stepped closer. "Sir, I'm sorry about all this. Just try to keep your distance, okay?" DeAndre nodded. "Trust me, officer, that's not gonna be a problem." When the cruisers finally rolled away, the neighborhood began to breathe again. Doors shut. Curtains twitched. TV screens flickered behind windows. DeAndre turned toward his porch, shoulders sagging. Monica, his wife, opened the door halfway, her eyes full of worry. "You okay?" "Yeah," he said quietly, though he didn't sound sure. She stepped closer. "You shouldn't have gone out there alone." "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," she whispered, "but they don't always see it that way." He didn't answer. His gaze drifted toward the Keene's driveway, where Brandon's bike still lay tipped over. A broken garden light blinked weakly behind it, like it was mocking the whole night. Inside, his kids whispered in the hallway, too curious to hide it. His daughter asked softly, "Dad, why were the police here?" He knelt beside her. "Because someone made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "The kind adults make when they don't listen." That night, DeAndre couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room, scrolling through his phone, trying to let the silence replace the echo of sirens. But it was too late. The videos were already online. A neighbor had posted the confrontation in the local Facebook group, HOA incident on Cedar Lake Drive, man yells at teenager. The comments came fast. "That guy needs to control his temper. Watch the video before you judge." But opinions didn't matter. The damage was done. By morning, everyone in Brookhaven Estates had their own version of the story, and none of them matched. It had all started small, a fence. A few broken garden lights. A boy who thought rules didn't apply to him. On paper, Brookhaven Estates was a dream neighborhood. The lawns were identical, mailboxes matched, and the HOA newsletter came printed on thick paper with quotes about community harmony. Every Saturday, retirees walked tiny dogs, kids sold lemonade, and lawnmowers hummed in the background like a suburban symphony. But harmony, DeAndre had learned, was mostly an illusion, a kind of peace that only lasted if everyone stayed in their lane, smiled at the right people, and stayed quiet when something bothered them. He and Monica had lived there for 6 years. They'd saved nearly a decade to buy that beige 2-story house with white shutters and enough space for their kids to have their own rooms. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. Most of their neighbors were decent. Howard and Denise across the street were retired teachers who brought cookies every Christmas. 2 doors down lived Mark Keene, Melinda's husband, rarely home but always polite when he was. And then there was Melinda herself, clipboard in hand, measuring the world one petty rule at a time. For years, DeAndre had tried to stay on her good side. He followed every rule, trimmed his hedges, kept his trash cans tucked neatly behind the fence. Still, she found reasons to correct him. Letters about grass being a 1/4 inch too tall. Notes about unapproved garden lighting. He'd laugh with Monica. Guess my lights are a threat to the neighborhood aesthetic. But beneath the humor, there was exhaustion, a quiet kind that builds over time. One afternoon, he came home from work and saw Melinda standing in front of his yard, pointing her phone toward his house. He rolled down his car window. "Everything okay?" "I'm just taking photos for the HOA report," she said flatly. "For what?" "Your mailbox is leaning a bit." He stared at her for a long second, unsure if she was serious. "It's a mailbox, not the Leaning Tower of Pisa," he wanted to say, but he kept it light. She gave a tight smile. "Rules are rules," she said. That was Brookhaven. Small rules, sharp edges. You learn to pick your battles. Most days DeAndre didn't want to fight. He worked from home, fixing code and managing networks for a logistics company in Raleigh. His life had a rhythm. Morning jogs, coffee with Monica on the porch, weekends fixing whatever needed fixing. His kids, Kendall and Ari, rode their bikes with neighborhood kids, and for a while, Brandon had seemed like a loud but harmless teenager. Then the little things began to appear. Scratched car doors, a missing basketball, muddy footprints across the flower beds. DeAndre told himself kids would be kids. He waited. When the new garden lights kept turning up broken, he stopped waiting. He checked the security footage out of habit and saw it clear as day. Brandon, headphones in, cutting through the yard, stomping lights until they shattered. DeAndre felt that slow, cold disappointment. Why can't people teach respect? Monica looked up at him from the kitchen table and asked, "You saw it?" He nodded. "I'll talk to him tomorrow, calmly, no yelling." The next morning he found Brandon again. Same hoodie, same shortcut. DeAndre stepped outside, waved. "Hey, Brandon. Got a second?" The boy stopped, startled. "Yeah?" DeAndre kept his voice steady. "Listen, I need you to stop cutting through my property. You've broken some of my lights." Brandon kicked at the dirt and mumbled, "I didn't mean to. It's just faster." "There's a sidewalk for a reason," DeAndre said. The kid shrugged and promised he'd try harder. DeAndre smiled, small victory. Respect goes both ways, he thought. But neighborhoods like Brookhaven were rarely simple. That night the camera caught Brandon again, and this time he even glanced at the lens before running. Glass glittered on the lawn the next morning. DeAndre felt his patience wear thin. It wasn't just lights now. It was the quiet disrespect, the message that some rules didn't apply to certain people. When he told Monica, she sighed. "You've been more patient than anyone. Just don't make it worse." He didn't know what worse meant. He only knew he couldn't ignore it. So he spoke to the boy again. This time he meant it to be the end. He didn't want confrontation. He wanted acknowledgement. He wanted the small courtesy of a kid walking around instead of through his yard. He wanted to be seen. But Brookhaven had other plans. The following morning dawned soft and ordinary. Birds on fences, the hiss of sprinklers. The jogger in a neon vest on Cedar Lake Drive. DeAndre was on his porch with his coffee when he saw the flash of gray and red dart between houses. "Brandon, again." DeAndre set down his cup and walked across his yard. Not fast, not angry, just steady. "Hey!" he called. "Brandon." The boy froze mid-step. "You and I already talked about this," DeAndre said. Brandon shifted, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "I said I'm sorry," he muttered. "Sorry doesn't fix broken lights," DeAndre answered. He pointed to the cracked lamp by his shoe. "Maybe it's not a big deal to you," he said, "but this yard cost me time and money. Respect goes both ways." There was a pause. For a heartbeat, DeAndre hoped reason might still work. The boy looked away, mumbled something, and then, "I said I'll stop." DeAndre felt relief and turned to go. That should have been it. Melinda stepped out onto her porch like she'd been waiting for the scene's cue. Her voice cut across the quiet, sharp and loud. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded. She was barefoot, phone already up, filming. Her tone was accusation, not curiosity. "Good morning," DeAndre said, trying to keep calm. "I was just—" "Don't you good morning me," she snapped. "Why are you confronting my son?" DeAndre blinked. "Because your son keeps cutting through my yard and breaking my lights. I've talked to him twice." Melinda closed the distance and kept recording. "You don't get to talk to my child. You come to me if there's a problem." She said it like a rulebook she'd memorized. "Remember last month? You told me to let boys be boys." DeAndre's voice stayed even. "That's not what I said," he replied. "It is exactly what you said." Her face hardened, and there was that small, cruel tightening at the mouth, the smile without the eyes. The accusation landed like a stone. Brandon shuffled, awkward and ashamed. "Mom, it's not a big deal," he pleaded. Melinda's answer was swift. "Go inside, now!" He ran up the steps and vanished. Melinda turned back, eyes hot. "You scared him," she told DeAndre. "You were standing over him. You had your voice raised." "I wasn't yelling," he said. "You can check the video." She pressed her lips thin and raised her phone higher as if the camera could shield her. "You're recording my child without consent." "That's illegal," she said. "It's my property," she added, narrowing the claim to a weapon. DeAndre's patience thinned. "It's my camera." He held up his phone and showed the footage. Brandon laughing as a garden light snapped beneath his sneaker, the muffled beat of music from his earbuds echoing on the clip. For a beat, righteous certainty faltered on Melinda's face, but instead of admitting it, she doubled down. "You're threatening me." "I'm calling the police." DeAndre's chest dropped. Neighbors craned from windows. A man pretending to check his mail started walking closer, curiosity claiming righteousness. Melinda shouted into her phone, loud enough for the street to hear. "Yes, I'd like to report a man threatening me and my son." Her voice carried like an accusation, wrapped in the neighborhood's rules. DeAndre raised his hands, open-palmed. "I haven't touched anyone," he said. "I'm standing in my own yard." Melinda's breath hitched. She lifted the phone and said, "Stay back. He's getting aggressive." Her eyes were wide, the performance precise. He stepped back, palms still open. "You're lying," he said, quiet but steady. She hung up the call and stared at him like a verdict. "You'll regret this," she warned, voice low but fierce. The threat was a curveball, an attempt to flip the story before facts could matter. DeAndre walked back to his porch, the air around him suddenly heavier. Monica met him at the door with worry carved into her face. "What happened?" she asked. He told her, and she put a hand to his shoulder, grounding him. Inside, the kids watched TV but glanced at him like they had grown a tether to the moment. DeAndre thought of the camera footage, of the way things could escalate, of how quickly the neighborhood would choose a side based on noise and spectacle. By evening, someone had already taken Melinda's phone clip and uploaded it with a caption that left out the broken lights and the laughter. Words travel faster than truth, and here they had already started their work. DeAndre scrolled, feeling the small, cold pull of being judged before anyone knew the whole story. He had not raised his voice. He had asked for simple respect. Now, the simple request had become a headline on a screen, ready to shape what the neighbors would decide to believe. He stood there for a long time, staring at nothing, his mind heavy and slow. Then, without a word, he turned and started walking home. Each step felt heavier than the last, like he was sinking into quicksand and didn't know how deep it went. When he reached the door, Monica was waiting, her eyes filled with worry. "What happened?" she asked quickly. "I called the police," he said quietly. Her eyes widened. "You're kidding." "No," he muttered, staring out the window. "They'll be here soon." And they were. 10 minutes later, flashing red and blue lights painted the houses of Brookhaven Lane. But what those officers saw that night was only half the story. The real chaos was still waiting, hidden in the whispers, the cameras, and the neighbors who loved a good scandal. By the time the first police car rolled up, the street was alive with curiosity. Curtains twitched, garage doors cracked open just enough for people to peek through. Brookhaven wasn't the kind of place where police visits happened often, and that made every second feel heavier, more electric. DeAndre stood at the edge of his lawn, hands visible, shoulders low. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong, but he also knew how quickly moments like this could turn. The murmurs were already spreading, bouncing from porch to porch like sparks in dry grass. 2 officers stepped out of the cruiser, one older, with gray at his temples, the other young and visibly nervous. "Evening," the senior officer said, voice cautious. "We got a report of a disturbance. What's going on here?" Before DeAndre could answer, Melinda's voice cut through the air. "He threatened me and my son. He was yelling at us." The younger officer turned toward her. "Ma'am, can you please step back?" She hesitated, then folded her arms, muttering about how unsafe she felt. DeAndre took a steady breath. "Officers, I didn't threaten anyone. I have security footage showing her son cutting through my yard and damaging property. I just asked him to stop. That's it." The older officer nodded. "You have that video?" DeAndre pulled out his phone and played the clip. Both officers leaned in. There was no yelling, no aggression, just a calm man speaking to a laughing teenager who crushed a garden light under his shoe. The senior officer sighed quietly. "Doesn't look like you did anything wrong here." Melinda's tone sharpened. "He was recording my child." "Ma'am," the young officer replied gently, "it's on his property." "That's allowed." She blinked, thrown off by their neutrality. "You're just going to let him get away with this?" "There's nothing to get away with," the officer said firmly. DeAndre's patience thinned. "I just want this to stop, that's all." "Then don't talk to my son again," Melinda snapped. "You don't get to discipline other people's children." "Then make sure your son respects other people's property," DeAndre shot back, his calm finally cracking. The older officer raised his hands. "All right, that's enough. Nobody's under arrest. Let's cool things down." But it was too late. The damage was done. Cameras were out. A woman across the street filmed from her porch. Another neighbor whispered, "That's the guy from the HOA letters, isn't it?" Melinda straightened, trembling but fueled by attention. "I can't believe this. I'm calling the HOA president. You'll be hearing from us." DeAndre didn't respond. He turned and walked toward his porch, jaw tight. Inside, Monica stood by the window, her expression heavy. "You handled it the best you could," she said softly. "Doesn't matter," he muttered. "They'll twist it anyway." Their daughter Kendall peeked from behind the hallway. "Are the police gone?" "Yes, sweetheart," he said gently. "They're gone." But peace didn't come that night. The next morning, his phone buzzed non-stop. Notifications, messages, alerts. One stood out. "You might want to check the neighborhood Facebook group." He clicked the link. There it was, a blurry video from across the street with the caption, "Man confronts teen and gets aggressive. Cops called." The video didn't show the full story. It started mid-conversation, right when Melinda was yelling, and DeAndre was trying to explain. The comments were brutal. "Why is he yelling at a kid?" "He should have gone through the HOA. People need to learn to control their temper." Some tried to defend him. "Watch the video. He wasn't yelling." But it didn't matter. His name, his face, his house were all over social media. That afternoon, he saw Brandon biking past, head down, avoiding eye contact. DeAndre wanted to call out, to fix it somehow, but he couldn't. One more word could turn into another accusation. A few houses down, Melinda was on her phone again. She turned, saw him, and shot him a glare sharp enough to cut glass before disappearing inside. By evening, the HOA sent an email. Reminder, all neighborly disputes must be handled through proper HOA channels. Direct confrontations are strongly discouraged. No names mentioned, but everyone knew. That night, Monica placed a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing. People will see that. He looked out at the broken garden light near the fence. Maybe, he said softly, but right now it doesn't feel like it. The next day, a reporter from a local blog reached out, asking for his side of the story. He ignored it. He wasn't chasing fame or sympathy. He just wanted fairness and a little peace. But peace doesn't last when pride, perception, and proof collide. By Sunday, the story had a life of its own. The video spread from the neighborhood page to city forums to a small online blog with the headline, HOA dispute escalates. Mother calls police after confrontation with neighbor. No names, but everyone knew who it was. DeAndre sat at the breakfast table, scrolling through comments that stacked up like bricks. Typical aggressive behavior. He probably scared her. Why didn't he just call the HOA? Monica set a plate of eggs in front of him. You need to stop reading that. I'm trying, he said quietly, but it's hard. The kids were pretending not to listen, but they'd heard everything. The lights, the shouting, their dad becoming the neighborhood villain. Then came a knock. 2 uniformed officers stood on the porch again. Morning, one said. We just wanted to follow up. Mrs. Keene filed a statement. A statement? DeAndre asked, exhausted. For what? She said she felt threatened. Said you were yelling and got too close to her son. He gave a hollow laugh. You saw the footage. You know that's not true. We did, the officer replied. But protocol requires us to follow up. No charges, just stay clear of each other. Believe me, DeAndre said, that's exactly what I plan to do. After they left, he stood at the doorway, staring at the calm street. Every house looked peaceful, but behind those doors, gossip was alive and burning. Later, he went to Home Depot to buy new garden lights. It should have been a simple errand, but his thoughts kept spinning. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't touched anyone. He'd only asked for respect, and somehow that had turned into a police call. When he got home, Monica was on the porch, phone in hand, worry in her eyes. She just posted on the HOA page, she said. He sighed. What now? She said she had to protect her child from a hostile neighbor. Said you were confrontational and threatening. His stomach sank. She's painting herself as the victim. And people are believing it, Monica whispered. He opened his laptop. There it was, Melinda's long post written in careful, polite language. Yesterday I experienced a deeply upsetting encounter. A male neighbor approached my son aggressively and made me fear for our safety. Underneath, comments flooded in. Glad you're safe, Melinda. You did the right thing calling the police. DeAndre stared at the screen, fists tight. He started typing, then stopped. Anything he said would just feed the fire. That night, Monica found him sitting in silence. You can't let her win by staying quiet, she said softly. I don't want a spectacle, he replied. She already made it one. She sat beside him, hand on his knee. Maybe the truth isn't loud enough for some people, but it still matters. He nodded slowly. Maybe. The next morning, DeAndre decided to do something small but symbolic. He went outside and replaced every broken garden light, one by one. The sound of the screwdriver twisting into the new garden light was oddly calming. DeAndre wasn't doing it to prove anything to her. He was doing it for himself. Across the street, Melinda stood on her porch again, phone in hand. She wasn't recording this time, just watching. Her face gave nothing away. DeAndre looked up once, then turned back to his work, determined not to give her the satisfaction of acknowledgement. That afternoon, an email arrived from the HOA president, Robert Gleason. It was short, formal, and sharp. A special board meeting had been called to address recent community tensions. Attendance was mandatory for both parties. Monica read it aloud, sighing. Well, looks like we're on trial. DeAndre leaned back, rubbing his temples. Just what I needed. A neighborhood courtroom. That night, when he turned off the lights, he could still see the memory of police cars flashing against manicured lawns, the red and blue reflections glowing on the faces of neighbors who didn't know what they were seeing, only what they wanted to believe. And now they'd have to pick sides. By Tuesday morning, the story had evolved from gossip into a full-blown neighborhood spectacle. The HOA chat was flooded. The Facebook post had passed 300 comments. People who hadn't even seen the full video were arguing about it at the park, at the coffee shop, even in front of their kids. DeAndre had become that neighbor, the one people whispered about but smiled at in person. Every walk to the mailbox felt like walking through fog made of judgment. A few nodded politely, others looked away. The fake smiles hurt more than the stares. When he stepped outside to take out the trash, voices drifted through the air. I heard he got aggressive. She was just protecting her kid. They always make it about something else. He didn't need to hear the rest. He already knew how fast truth gets rewritten when pride is involved. Monica met him at the front steps, a tablet in her hand. "You're trending on the neighborhood app," she said quietly. He groaned. "You've got to be kidding." "I wish I was. Someone edited your security footage, cut it right before you showed her the evidence. It looks like you're scolding the kid." He took the tablet, staring at the screen. The caption read, "Man confronts teen aggressively." It was surreal, watching himself turned into a villain in his own story. A few seconds of selective video had erased everything. His patience, his calm, the truth. "Who posted this?" he asked. "Anonymous account," Monica said. "Probably someone from the HOA circle." He set the tablet down and sat on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, staring at the street. Everything looked the same. Trimmed hedges, waving flags, sprinklers hissing in rhythm, but the atmosphere had shifted. The neighborhood wasn't a community anymore. It was a stage. Across the street, Melinda stepped out carrying groceries. For a moment she hesitated. Their eyes met. Maybe she'd say something, an apology, a truce. But then she looked away and disappeared inside. Inside, Monica paced the floor. "We can't just sit here. You need to clear your name before this gets worse." "How?" he asked. "Every time I try to explain, people twist it. They don't care about the truth. They care about the story." "Then tell your own," she said firmly. "Post the full video." He hesitated. "That'll make it blow up even more." "It's already blown up," she replied. "At least this way, people will see what really happened." He sat there in silence for a long moment, then nodded. "Fine." That night, DeAndre uploaded the full, uncut footage. No captions, no titles, no commentary. Just a simple message: this is what actually happened. Make your own judgment. For the first hour, nothing. Then the views started climbing. Dozens, then hundreds. Comments began pouring in. "I take back what I said. He was calm the whole time. She lied about being threatened." This is why cameras matter. But there were others too, unyielding voices refusing to budge. He probably edited it. Doesn't matter. He shouldn't have talked to her kid. Still looks aggressive to me. By midnight, the video had crossed 1,000 views. Monica sat beside him, scrolling through comments. "At least some people are seeing the truth now," she said softly. "Some," DeAndre murmured. "But truth isn't what people want. They want sides." The next morning, when he left for work, Robert Gleason was waiting near the mailbox. "We've got that meeting tonight," Robert said. "I'm asking you to keep things calm." DeAndre raised an eyebrow. "Calm? I've been calm since day one." Robert sighed. "You need to understand this community. Emotions are high. Melinda's been here a long time." "I've been here 6 years," DeAndre said evenly. "Long enough to deserve the same respect." Robert looked uneasy. "Just show up, say your piece. Let's get this over with." That evening, the HOA clubhouse was packed. Every chair filled, every phone charged and ready to record. DeAndre walked in beside Monica, feeling every pair of eyes follow them. Across the room, Melinda sat stiffly, surrounded by sympathetic faces. Robert cleared his throat at the front. "We're here to address the recent incident between 2 residents. Let's keep this civil." The room quieted. Melinda spoke first, voice trembling just enough to sound fragile. "I never wanted this to go so far, but I did what any mother would do. I protected my son." "Thank you, Melinda," Robert said. "Now, DeAndre, you may respond." DeAndre stood slowly, steady, deliberate. "I didn't come here to fight," he began. "I came here because I believe in fairness. I asked her son to stop damaging my property. That's all. I didn't yell. I didn't touch anyone. And I have the footage to prove it." He held up his phone. The video played on the screen, clear, calm, undeniable. The room was silent, except for the soft crack of the broken light echoing from the speakers. When it ended, he looked up. All I ever wanted was respect. Not special treatment, just respect. No one clapped. No one booed, but something shifted in the air. Faces softened. A quiet realization spread through the room. Maybe they'd judged too quickly. Melinda sat frozen, her jaw tight, eyes on the floor. But while the truth finally surfaced, forgiveness didn't follow. What came next wasn't resolution, it was fallout. The meeting ended, but the tension lingered like humidity. DeAndre and Monica walked home in silence, passing rows of perfect lawns and glowing porch lights. No one waved this time. People just watched, cautious, pretending not to think what they were thinking. Inside, Monica dropped her keys on the counter. You handled yourself perfectly, she said softly. DeAndre loosened his tie. Doesn't feel like it. Half the room wouldn't even look at me. They saw the truth, she said. Maybe, he replied. But knowing and caring aren't the same thing. He sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands, the adrenaline fading, leaving behind nothing but anger and exhaustion. It wasn't just about broken lights anymore. It was about how fragile fairness could be when perception got in the way. Across the street, Melinda's house was dark, except for the flicker of a TV through the blinds. DeAndre wondered what she was thinking, if she was embarrassed, regretful, or just planning her next move. He didn't have to wait long. The next morning, a thick envelope was taped to his door. Inside was a letter from the HOA. Due to recent community tensions, it read, the board recommends mediation between you and the Keene family. Please refrain from direct contact. Mediation? He muttered. Like we're kids on a playground. Monica skimmed the letter. At least it's something. Maybe it'll stop her from spreading more rumors. He looked out the window. Or maybe it's just their way of keeping her comfortable. He didn't reply right away. Instead, he mowed the lawn, replaced light bulbs, anything to keep his hands busy while his mind replayed the last week. That afternoon, his neighbor Howard, the retired teacher with suspenders and a calm voice, walked over. Rough week, huh? You could say that, DeAndre said. Howard leaned on the fence. I watched the video. You didn't do anything wrong. You saw it? Everyone saw it. They just don't all want to admit what it showed. Folks around here like things quiet, even if quiet means pretending nothing's wrong. DeAndre nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm starting to get that. Howard sighed. You handled yourself better than most would have. Don't let her get under your skin. It was a small gesture, but it meant more than he expected. Proof that not everyone in Brookhaven was watching from the shadows. Still, the tension lingered. That evening, Brandon came outside to shoot hoops in his driveway. The sound of the basketball echoed softly through the neighborhood. DeAndre watched for a moment, tempted to walk over, to say something. But then Melinda appeared in the doorway, eyes locked on him. She didn't have to say a word. The message was clear. He turned away and went inside. Dinner was quiet that night. The kids chatted about school and science fairs, trying to keep things light. But beneath their words, he could feel their worry, the way they watched him, measuring his mood like children do when the air feels wrong. Then Kendall spoke softly. Dad? Yeah, sweetheart. Are we in trouble? DeAndre set down his fork. No, baby. We're not in trouble. Then why did the police come here? Monica reached across the table and took Kendall's hand. Because sometimes adults make mistakes, she said gently, and they don't always know how to fix them. Kendall thought about that quietly for a long time. The soft twist of the screwdriver against fresh plastic was oddly calming. DeAndre wasn't doing it to prove anything to anyone. He was doing it for himself. Across the street, Melinda stood on her porch again, phone in hand. But this time she wasn't recording, just watching. Her face was unreadable, and for a moment their eyes met before DeAndre turned back to his work. That afternoon, an email from the HOA president, Robert Gleason, arrived for both of them. The subject line read, Special Board Meeting, Mandatory Attendance. Monica read it aloud, shaking her head. Just what we needed, DeAndre muttered. A neighborhood trial. That night, as he turned off the lights, the image of flashing police cars still haunted him. Red and blue lights painting the quiet lawns, the faces of neighbors frozen in judgment. They hadn't seen what really happened. They'd only seen what they wanted to. But at that HOA meeting, people would have to pick sides. And for once, the truth might actually speak for itself. By Tuesday morning, the story had grown beyond the street. The HOA group chat was on fire. The neighborhood Facebook post had more than 300 comments, and strangers were already arguing in public. Everyone had an opinion, even the ones who hadn't seen the video. DeAndre had become that neighbor, the man everyone whispered about but smiled at when they passed. Every walk to the mailbox felt like walking through a cloud of silent judgment. Some neighbors nodded politely, others looked away. But the fake smiles were worse than the stares. Even when he stepped outside to take out the trash, he could hear snippets of conversation floating through the air. I heard he got aggressive. She's just protecting her kid. They always make it about something else. He didn't need to hear the rest. He already knew how people saw what they wanted to see. Monica met him at the front steps holding a tablet. "You're trending on the neighborhood app," she said. He groaned. "You've got to be kidding me." "I wish I was. Someone edited a clip from your camera, just the part where you talked to Brandon. They cut it before you showed her the proof." DeAndre rubbed his eyes. "So now it looks like I was scolding him?" "Exactly. And they even added text, 'Man confronts teen aggressively.'" He took the tablet and stared at the screen. It was surreal, watching himself become the villain in his own story. A few seconds of video had erased hours of patience and restraint. "Who posted it?" he asked. "Anonymous," Monica said, "but probably someone from the HOA circle." He didn't reply. He just sat down on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, staring into the distance. The neighborhood looked the same. Trimmed hedges, sprinklers ticking softly, flags fluttering in the breeze. But everything felt different now. It wasn't a community anymore. It was a stage. Across the street, Melinda came out carrying groceries. For a second, it looked like she might say something, maybe even apologize. But she looked away and walked inside without a word. Inside, Monica paced. "We can't just sit here," she said. "You need to clear your name." "How?" DeAndre asked. "Every time I explain, people twist it. They don't want the truth. They want a story." "Then tell your own," she said firmly. "Post the full video." He hesitated. "That'll make it blow up even more." "It's already blown up," she replied. "At least this way people will see what really happened." DeAndre sat in silence for a moment, then nodded. That night, he uploaded the entire video, uncut, unedited, time-stamped. No captions, no spin, just a short caption. "This is what actually happened. Judge for yourself." For an hour, nothing happened. Then the views started climbing, dozens, then hundreds. The comments poured in. "I take back what I said. This guy was calm the whole time. She lied about being threatened. This is why cameras matter." But not everyone changed their minds. He probably edited it. "Still looks aggressive to me." Doesn't matter. He shouldn't have said anything to her kid. By midnight, the video had crossed 1,000 views. Monica scrolled beside him. "At least people are seeing the truth now," she said softly. "Some are," DeAndre replied. "But truth isn't what people want anymore. They want sides." The next morning, Robert Gleason was waiting by his mailbox. "We've got that meeting tonight," Robert said. "I'm asking you to keep things calm." DeAndre raised an eyebrow. "Calm? I've been calm since day one." "I know," Robert sighed, "but emotions are high. Melinda's been here a long time." "I've been here 6 years," DeAndre said evenly. "Long enough to deserve the same respect." Robert shifted awkwardly. "Just say your piece. Let's get this over with." That evening, the HOA clubhouse parking lot was packed. Every seat filled, every phone ready to record. DeAndre walked in with Monica beside him, feeling the weight of every stare. Across the room, Melinda sat with her arms crossed, surrounded by sympathetic faces. Robert cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss the recent incident between 2 residents. Let's keep this civil." The chatter died. Melinda spoke first. "I never meant for things to go this far," she said sweetly. "I just did what any mother would do, protected my son." Robert nodded. "Thank you, Melinda." "Now, DeAndre, your response?" DeAndre stood, voice steady. "I didn't come here to fight. I came because I believe in fairness. I asked her son to stop damaging my property, that's all. I didn't yell, didn't touch anyone, and I have the footage to prove it. He turned his phone toward the screen, playing the video. It was clear, calm, undeniable. The only sound was the faint crack of a light breaking. When it ended, DeAndre looked up. All I ever wanted was respect. Not special treatment, just respect. No one clapped. No one booed. But something shifted in the room. A quiet realization that maybe they'd judged too quickly. Melinda sat frozen, eyes darting toward the floor. But while the truth was finally visible, forgiveness was still far away. The meeting ended, but the tension lingered like humidity in the air. DeAndre and Monica walked home in silence, passing motionless porch lights and manicured lawns. No one waved this time. "You handled yourself perfectly," Monica said softly. DeAndre loosened his tie. "Doesn't feel like it. Half the room wouldn't even look at me. They know the truth now." "Maybe," he said. "But knowing and caring aren't the same thing." Inside, he sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. The adrenaline faded, leaving only exhaustion and quiet anger. It wasn't just about the lights anymore. It was about how fragile fairness really was. Across the street, Melinda's house glowed faintly from a TV behind her blinds. He caught himself wondering what she was thinking, if guilt kept her awake too. The next morning, a thick envelope was taped to his door. Inside was a letter in Robert's careful handwriting. "Dear Mr. Collins, due to ongoing tensions, the board recommends mediation between you and the Keene family. Please refrain from further direct contact." DeAndre sighed. "Mediation? Like we're two kids on a playground." Monica skimmed it. "At least it might stop her from spreading rumors." "Or maybe," he said quietly, "it's just their way of keeping her comfortable." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he spent the day mowing the lawn and fixing things that didn't need fixing, just to keep his hands busy while his mind replayed the last week. Later that afternoon, his elderly neighbor Howard walked over, suspenders hanging loose. "Rough week, huh?" he said. "You could say that." "I watched the video," Howard said. "You didn't do anything wrong." DeAndre looked up. "You saw it?" "Everyone saw it, but not everyone wants to admit what it showed. Folks around here like things quiet, even if quiet means pretending nothing's wrong." DeAndre nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'm starting to get that." Howard sighed. "You handled yourself better than most would have. Don't let her get under your skin." It was a small thing to say, but it meant more than he expected. That evening, Brandon came out to shoot hoops in his driveway. The rhythmic bounce of the ball echoed across the street. For a moment, DeAndre thought about walking over, maybe talking again. But then he saw Melinda standing in the doorway, watching him silently. She didn't have to speak. Her look said enough. Dinner was quiet that night. The kids talked about school, while DeAndre stared at his plate. He could feel them watching him, reading his mood. Finally, Kendall spoke softly. "Dad?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Are we in trouble?" DeAndre set his fork down. "No, baby. We're not in trouble." "Then why did the police come?" Monica reached across the table and touched her daughter's hand. "Because sometimes adults make mistakes," she said gently, "and they don't always know how to fix them." DeAndre opened the note slowly. The handwriting was uneven. The ink smudged like it had been written in a hurry. It read, "I'm sorry for breaking your lights. I didn't mean to cause trouble." DeAndre stared at it for a long moment, then folded it carefully. "He's a good kid," he said softly. "He just needs someone to tell him no once in a while." Melinda managed a small, tired smile. "He's stubborn. He gets that from me." DeAndre leaned against the porch railing, looking at her. "You know," he said, "if you'd just come over and talked like this on the first day, none of this would have happened." She lowered her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "I've been on that HOA board so long, I forgot how to just be a neighbor." That truth hung in the air, heavy, real, and a little sad. He nodded slowly. "Well," he said after a moment, "I appreciate you saying that. I really do." Melinda hesitated, glancing toward the street. "I stepped down from the board," she said quietly. After everything that happened, it didn't feel right anymore. Maybe it's time someone else handled the rules. DeAndre didn't say anything for a while. Then he gave a quiet nod. That's probably for the best. She took a step back, ready to leave. Halfway across the street, she turned and looked at him again. Her voice trembled slightly. "You didn't deserve what I did to you," she said. "I just hope one day the people who saw that video forget about me before they forget about you." He didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. She went back inside, closing the door softly behind her. For the first time in days, DeAndre felt something other than anger. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but something close. Something that felt like peace trying to find its way back. That night he told Monica about their conversation. She listened in silence, her hands folded on her lap. "Do you believe her?" she finally asked. "I believe she meant it in that moment," DeAndre said. "Whether she changes after that, we'll see." Monica touched his hand gently. "Sometimes closure doesn't come from justice," she said. "Sometimes it comes from hearing someone finally admit they were wrong." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe that's enough." They sat together in the quiet hum of the kitchen, the faint sound of the refrigerator filling the silence. Across the street, the Keene house slowly went dark, one light at a time. The next morning, when DeAndre went out to pick up his newspaper, he noticed something new. The broken section of the fence between their yards, the one Brandon had cut through so many times, was fixed. Fresh wood, clean paint, no gaps, no note, no words, just a quiet gesture. He smiled faintly, tucking the paper under his arm. The street looked calm again, not peaceful yet, but lighter somehow. Still, he wondered, what do you do when one misunderstanding shows just how fragile trust can really be? A week passed. The neighborhood started to look normal again, or at least it pretended to. The lawns were freshly trimmed, mailboxes stood tall, and the HOA newsletter went out like nothing had happened. This time, it included a cheerful quote about forgiveness strengthening communities. Nobody said who wrote it, but everyone already knew. DeAndre read it once, then set it aside. He wasn't bitter anymore, just tired. The kind of tired that settles deep in your bones after you've spent too long trying to prove something that never should have needed proving. Life in Brookhaven Estates moved on, but it wasn't quite the same. People waved again, though the waves were slower now, more thoughtful. A few awkward smiles. Some stopped to make small talk about football or the weather. Thinly veiled apologies disguised as neighborly chit-chat. DeAndre accepted them with quiet grace. He didn't hold grudges, but he didn't forget either. One afternoon, while fixing a loose plank on that same fence, he saw Brandon again. The boy hesitated on the sidewalk, basketball tucked under one arm. "Hey," DeAndre said. "Hey," Brandon replied softly. After a pause, he added, "Thanks for not hating me." DeAndre smiled a little. "Wasn't worth it. You learned something from it, right?" The boy nodded. "Yeah. Mom told me sometimes grown-ups make mistakes too." DeAndre chuckled. "That's true. What matters is what we do after them." Brandon grinned shyly and went back to shooting hoops in his driveway. It was a small moment, but it mattered more than any apology, any HOA meeting, or any online post could. Inside, Monica was setting the dinner table when DeAndre walked in. "He talked to you?" she asked. "Yeah," DeAndre said, smiling faintly. "He'll be all right." She looked up. "Maybe everyone will." Later that night, DeAndre sat on his porch again, the same place where it had all started, but this time the air felt still, calm, almost earned. The lights he'd replaced glowed softly across the yard. The street was quiet. Not the uneasy kind of quiet that follows chaos, but the kind that comes when people start to breathe again. He thought about everything that had happened, the shouting, the flashing police lights, the online comments, the whispered conversations, the apology. It was strange how fast things could spiral out of control, how quickly fear could replace reason. And all it took was one misunderstanding, one assumption, one sentence taken the wrong way. He realized it had never really been about a broken garden light. It was about perception, whose truth gets believed first and whose gets questioned second. And that, he knew, wasn't just a neighborhood problem, it was a human problem. Across the street, Melinda's porch light flickered softly in her window. She hadn't spoken to him since that night. She didn't have to. Sometimes silence was its own kind of apology. He hoped she meant what she said, not for him, but for herself, for her son. Maybe this would be the story that finally changed something in her. A car rolled slowly past, headlights sweeping over the road like a quiet patrol. DeAndre closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the cool night air. For the first time in a long while, he felt steady. Howard strolled over from across the street, holding 2 cans of soda. "Mind if I sit?" "Go ahead," DeAndre said with a smile. Howard settled beside him with a quiet sigh. "You know," he said, cracking the can open, "people think neighborhoods are built with fences and contracts, but really, they're just built with people deciding how much they're willing to care." DeAndre nodded. "Yeah," he said, "sometimes it takes a mess to remind them of that." Howard chuckled. "Mess or miracle, depends how you look at it." They sat there in silence, sipping their sodas, watching the last bit of daylight fade behind the rooftops. Somewhere down the street, a sprinkler hissed to life, steady and rhythmic. It sounded peaceful again. After a while, Howard said quietly, "You did good, DeAndre. Most folks would have lost their temper." DeAndre smiled faintly. "Losing your temper feels good for a minute. Keeping your dignity lasts longer." Howard raised his can. "Well said." When the old man left, DeAndre stayed out a little, longer, staring at the street that had once felt like enemy ground. It wasn't about winning or proving anyone wrong. It was about what people choose to see when they look at each other, and how fast assumptions can turn neighbors into strangers. But also how one moment of honesty, one act of humility, can turn things back around. He thought about his kids, about the kind of world they were growing up in. Maybe it wasn't perfect, maybe it never would be. But if they learned anything from this, he hoped it was that calm doesn't mean weakness, and truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. He turned off the porch light, ready to go inside. Across the street, the Keene house was dark, except for a soft lamp glowing in the window. A quiet reminder that people can change, even if slowly. As he stepped inside, Monica called from the hallway, "You coming to bed?" "Yeah," he said, glancing one last time at the peaceful street. "I think I finally can." Because in the end, that's what this story had always been about, not fences or lights or HOA rules, but what happens when people forget to see each other as human. And sometimes it takes the wrong kind of noise to remind everyone what respect actually sounds like. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect. What would you have done if you were in DeAndre's shoes? Subscribe to Unfolded Tales Explained for more real, powerful stories that reveal how perception shapes truth and how empathy can rebuild what misunderstanding breaks.